Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for this EJ Thriving Communities Grantmaking Program information session. My name is Jeff Severin. I'm the Associate Director for the Heartland Environmental Justice Center. We are the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center for Region 7. So we provide technical support for communities that are experiencing environmental injustice, energy injustice throughout Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and the adjoining indigenous nations. Major focus of that assistance is helping organizations pursue funding for their environmental and energy justice programs, which is why we're here today in support of the Research Triangle Institute, the EPA Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Grantmaking Program, TCGM for short. They provide services for Region 7, Region 4, and National Central. So we'll be hearing from their team about this just launched funding opportunity, and then I'll be back in a little bit to share more about what the Heartland Environmental Justice Center can do to support your work. As was mentioned, as we talk today, please type your questions into the Q&A feature, and the team will answer them as we go. So we also have some time at the end to answer those questions live. Joining me today from the TCGM team is Dilcy Davis, Tatiana Bustos, and Laura Baum. There are some additional folks probably behind the scenes who will help answer those questions. But for now, let's get started in learning more about this grant opportunity. Dilcy.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Dilcy Davis, and I'm one of the co-leads of the for the Communications and Outreach for Cultivating Healthy Environments, Environmental Justice, Thriving Communities Grant-Making Program. That's a mouthful, so I'll refer it to as the TCGM program or EJ TCGM program during the rest of this presentation. So we're going to walk through a number of slides about TCGM and also about the TCTAC, as you heard from Jeff. So we're going to jump in and talk about our objectives for today. So we're going to share a high-level description of the EJ TCGM opportunity for Region 7. We're going to talk about, hopefully this will help you understand how to use the funding notice to prepare your application. So the NOFO, as we call it, the Notice of Funding Opportunity, that will help you prepare your application. We also hope that it will help you better align with the Region 7 TCTAC, which stands, as Jeff mentioned, stands for the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center for assistance with your applications. Next, and identify where you can request more information, and we'll share that slide at the end. Next slide. So what is the Thriving Communities Grant-Making Program? So we'll talk about that on the very next slide. So a little bit about the program. So the goal of the program is to support capacity for organizations and to ensure that these organizations have access to federal funding, which we oftentimes know is consumed by larger organizations. So the TCGM program is intended to increase efficiency for smaller organizations and also to reduce the barriers to receiving that funding. So we're taking on a lot of the administrative tasks so that you don't have to. Another goal is to encourage meaningful involvement of community members. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, but you'll notice that the grant-making program, as we go through the slides, is largely designed with community members at the heart of making decisions around the program itself and the funding mechanisms. Next slide. So Jeff mentioned the Research Triangle Institute, or RTI International. We are an independent nonprofit institute that's dedicated to improving the human condition. And RTI serves as the role as the central grant maker, which is shown on this map with the states showing colors for regions 4, 5, 6, and 7. We're also the regional grant maker for Region 4, which you can see on this map, and Region 7. RTI is working with a number of partners. You'll see this list at the bottom of this program. There are additional partners that aren't named here, but to name a few, we have the Southern Environmental Law Center, North Carolina Central University, the National Center for Healthy Housing, the University of Kentucky, and the International City County Management Association. Next question. So this question is probably one that's asked the most. what's the eligibility for these awards? So we're looking at nonprofit organizations, community-based organizations, and grassroots nonprofit organizations, philanthropic and civic organizations with nonprofit status, tribal governments, both federally recognized and state recognized, and intertribal consortia, local governments, Native American organizations, and institutions of higher education that are partnering with a community-based organization or another nonprofit. As one of the things that we are looking at, and we'll talk more about this in the next slide, but thinking about organizations that have not been able to apply, either they've been resource constrained or the burden has been really great in order for them to try to do it, or the timeline. And we'll talk about the timeline a little bit later on. All right, next slide. So what types of funding opportunities are there? The program is essentially designed and essentially for funding compartments. So this first one here is non-competitive. It's designed to help organizations build a capacity for applying to these other 3 tiers within TCGM. So these grants are not competitive. They are meant to be awarded directly to organizations that demonstrate that they need them. The application process is a little different for these non-competitive awards. There are not as many questions. There's still going to be a requirement for the budget for a project and still required to give information about the organization, but the awards will not move through the same review process. They'll go directly to the community advisory boards to determine if the organization has submitted enough information to highlight that there is highlight that the eligibility for a community building award. So then when we move over to the competitive tiers, there's a distinction really falls around the type of grant. So if you look here at tier 1, we have the assessment projects. These are awards for community-based organizations to do assessment in the community to better understand the local environmental and public health concerns. And so you can see some examples here: research, sampling, testing, monitoring, and others. And this is up to $150,000 for year 1. You don't have to apply for $150,000. You apply for what you need, but it's up to $150,000. So let's say you've already done an assessment, you understand what the local environmental and public health concerns are. You may consider applying for a planning grant. And this is for organizations to plan on how they're going to address the local environmental and public health issues. Underneath that, you can see some examples: partnership building, public outreach and education, stakeholder coordination, training, community cleanups, small land purchases and acquisitions. And this can be for 1 to 2 years and up to $250,000. Again, you don't have to apply for $250,000. You can apply for what you need up until that. The last one, let's say you've already done your assessment, you've already planned, and now you want to implement your project. You may want to apply for a tier 3 development grant. And this is for 2 years and up to $350,000. That could be for construction plans, schematics, and technical development, permitting activities, small land purchases and acquisitions, implementation of project plans, public outreach and education. So these examples are not exhaustive. There may be other needs or decisions that you want to apply under one of these for planning or development, if that's not listed here today in this document. Next slide, please. All right, so this is the application submission and review timelines. So the applications will be accepted on a rolling basis, but the decisions will be announced quarterly. So here you can see the examples of target dates to submit for funding. So the first target date is January 31st to submit for funding, and then you'll see the additional cycles under here. So perhaps you're not ready to apply in cycle 1. You still have additional cycles to apply. You will notice that October 31st is the last day to apply for a 2-year project in order to be able to complete that project by 2027. And next slide, thank you. So this program is guided by community members, as I've mentioned before. So again, the CABs, the community advisory boards, are employed to review the application and ultimately decides which organizations will receive funding. They're also a component in the review process where there are external reviewers that will support the CABs, and their primary role is to utilize their lived experience and bring that expertise, whether it's lived experience or technical professionals, to do an initial review of the application and provide that information to the CABs in their review. There are also tribal liaisons that are working with the EJTCGM program to ensure that there's reach and connection to tribes and indigenous people, because ultimately our goal is to ensure that this funding makes it to those communities that have projects where they can mitigate environmental harm. Next slide, please. All right, so we have some other resources that can help you as you're going through working on your application. So you'll see starting here, in January, we'll be having a number of webinars. The first webinar will be specifically on applying for a non-competitive award. So that will focus specifically on that. The next one will be describing your organization. Let's say you need some assistance with or we'll talk specifically just about the describing your organization, and we'll have time to answer questions specifically on that section. And then webinar 3 is developing your project. So that, again, in that particular section, we'll focus on developing your project. And the next webinar after that is going to be developing your proposal budget. There will be a session specifically for developing your budget. And then Jeff will also talk about some other opportunities. I just want to remind you that there, again, is a Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen to submit questions. Some of those questions can be answered, ongoing, and then some of them will be that are not answered online will be answered. We'll try to get to those questions during the Q&A. And a reminder also that you can receive email updates at thrivingenvironments.org. Next slide. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more, spend a little bit more time on the notice of funding opportunity, the NOFO. So let's keep moving. Thanks. So there, you can see the table of contents on the right side, and you'll see directly that what we've done is taking all the information from the EPA and all the requirements about how to apply for federal funding that's required, and we distilled this all into one document that you could essentially have in one hand while you're preparing your application. So it's designed to help you walk through the process of applying. You can also see it's color-coded. So the sections on the NOFO around applying and preparing for your application are bolded in one color, and then what to expect is in another color. So it walks through the details on in the review process. It breaks down the different steps, and it also identifies points to give program feedback. So for the apply section, you can see here, it tells you how to set up your account in SM Apply, which is the application portal, how to collaborate with others, again, breaking down the different components of the application, and reviews all the application questions in each section. And what to expect afterwards is provides details on the review process, and it breaks down the 4 steps, which we'll show in another slide, and identifying, again, points for feedback so that we can continue to make improvements. Next slide. Okay, so I'm coming back to the different types of the grant opportunities. What we want to highlight again is that there's the non-competitive is for $75,000 for the first year, and then again we have different tiers of funding and different years again. So the last year again is for up to 2 years. Tier 2 is 1 to 2 years, and then tier 1 is up to 1 year. So the non-competitive awards are what we call fixed price awards, so they don't follow a reimbursement type framework. So there's be a payment schedule that's outlined and aligns with milestones for work. The competitive awards are reimbursement style awards. Once an applicant has been awarded, you'll be assigned a grants management officer, and will be asking the applicants to work closely with their grants officers to work through any questions about invoicing, payment schedule, or any other potential difficulties or challenges or questions that you might have with the reimbursement payment style. But we also ask you that you not let the reimbursement model be a deterrent or an obstacle for applying. I think if you are having some questions, to please consider applying and then working with the program office to be able to work through any challenges that you're having. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the goals of the EJ TCGM program is to reduce the administrative burden that often comes with applying for federal grants. So our goal is just really to reduce the time and the effort for completing an application. So most of the questions are multiple choice or short answer, like 500 words or less. There's detailed description of the requested information is provided in each section of the NOFO. So again, if you use that as a guide, it gives details around each of the information that you need. Within the SM Apply, the portal, you can save and return at any time. You can also add multiple contributors to the application. So if you have others that would work on different sections, and you can also receive email notifications and adjust the preferences there. And you'll see the notification preferences here on the bottom right. Okay, next slide. All right. So also you'll need to include information. Oh, let me start at the top first. So your organization will be asked to provide a UEI, and that's a unique entity identifier, which you can get through sam.gov. This is something that you don't have to have in order to start your application. You can apply, but if you receive funds, or you do receive an award, then you are required to have a UEI in place. So it makes sense to go ahead and initiate that UEI application process as soon as possible. There are resources. I think Jeff may mention that later on, getting assistance in applying on sam.gov. We'll also need to know what your organization's basic details, contact information, and a brief 500-word description of your organization. Again, if you need some assistance with this, you can attend one of the webinars. All right, and we can continue. All right, so going back to the non-competitive awards within the application. So there is information that you have to provide, but it is not the questions, there's not as many questions. You'll see you do have to have project information. There's a reduced number of questions. It really focuses on capacity building, how this money can help your organization build capacity to then again be able to apply for future funding and one of the other tiers. It does not go, when you apply for the non-competitive funding, it does not go through the external review. That information goes directly to the CABs. Great, thank you. Next slide. All right, so what happens next after you submit? We have a 4-step review process that again is tiered for the competitive awards. We'll start with there'll be an initial administrative review and our goal is to make that within 10 days of applying. And the goal of that is to identify any issues or any omissions in your application. And then, give that information back to you or refer you to the TCTAC if that's needed, but to give you an opportunity to resubmit that information. The external review again, looking at the feasibility of the project. So tier 2 and 3 receive a technical review as well. And then from there, this information is then referred back to the community advisory boards, who then review the applications. They consider the information from the external review, and they discuss the applications, and they make the funding decisions for all applications. And then after that, there'll be a notice of funding decision, whether if the the project was awarded or not awarded. And then there can be feedback and guidance on the decisions, and resubmissions are allowed. Again, there might be the opportunity to refer back to the TCTAC for assistance before resubmitting. And all of this review process is less than 3 months. Again, our goal is to reduce the burden. A lot of times when folks have applied for federal funding, we know that sometimes that process can take a while to receive funding. Next slide. Oh, I think, so I went over the slide, but just again, so you can see the dates. January the 21st, 31st is the first, is when we will begin to look at the applications. So there is some time. There's not really an advantage to having to try to get it in before that deadline. So if you, as long as you meet the January 31st, again, if you're not ready during that cycle, there is another, you can submit after January 31st through April 30th. And that, again, that will be another cycle, and continue on from there. Next slide, please. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to Jeff from the Heartland Environmental Justice Center, and he'll talk about some of the available technical assistance.
Thanks, Dulcie. Again, we're the Heartland Environmental Justice Center, the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center. And I think making that distinction is important because we're not the ones that have the money, we're the ones that are here to help you get the money. And so our center is available for support as you're working through this process, thinking about what your project will be, how you want to go about that application, any other support that you need along the way. So our role as a Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center is really to help folks identify and pursue funding opportunities. And we do that by lending our technical expertise in a range of topics as you're working on your projects. We've also learned that there's a lot of work that goes into just being ready to prepare or to apply for a grant. So we have a lot of other services to just get you moving that direction, as well as helping you through the application process. Next slide. So our team is based out of Wichita State University, but we are scattered kind of throughout the region. We have folks in Wichita, we have folks in Lawrence, Kansas, St. Louis, Kansas City, and then up in Nebraska near Lyons. Primarily the team that works on this will be helping with applications are those project managers in the second row, so Mandy, Chris, and Anna. But Michelle and I pitch in and help. You might connect with Adrian, who's the community engagement coordinator if you're in Wichita, or Magali in Kansas City. Greg's our tribal communities community engagement coordinator. Their roles are really to help those early stages, connecting people, understanding what the challenges are, and then working with our project managers to identify what specific services are needed the most for each community. So next slide. We also work with a range of partners across the region. So a lot of them are state-based and will be providing some additional support. Center for Rural Affairs works primarily up in Nebraska. Obviously, the Kansas Rural Center and Iowa Environmental Council work in their respective states. This Climate and Energy Project is based primarily in Kansas. And then we have a few other partners that work across the region. K-State, we work with their engineering extension, and one of the key elements of that program is the K-State TAB, or Technical Assistance for Brownfields. So I know a lot of folks are looking at properties that could be assessed as brownfields. and might be getting support from that group. EPN and CE Core provide a network of volunteers that have a lot of expertise in a range of engineering and other environmental topics that can provide some kind of technical expertise that you might need as you're working through your grant application. Next slide. So we recognize that every community is different and has different needs, challenges, problems, opportunities. Our goal is really to operate first as a listener. We know that you all are the experts in your communities, and we're just there to help make some sense of things, understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish, help you think about how to prioritize that and incorporate it into a grant application. And kind of be that extra bit of capacity to kind of boost that expertise that you already have and help you along the way through this process. So next slide. As I mentioned, we offer a range of services and really try to customize it based on your specific project, your specific need. Again, starting with grant development, and that's why that's why y'all are here today. But that can look like anything from developing project ideas to outlining metrics, helping with the budget. We can't write your grant for you, of course, but we can kind of walk through that process, brainstorm with you, think about how to put this package together and make sure that you have the best possible application so that sails through that first review process and on into the next stages of review, and hopefully makes it to that award. And then post award, we can also help you with managing the grant, whether that's working on reporting, making sure that you're monitoring and measuring things, and hopefully even a little bit of that implementation, thinking about thinking through the process of getting that project on the ground and going. Outside of that, we can do a lot of things from helping educate folks. So if that's part of the need in your community, we've got a team that is great with environmental education, public education, raising awareness about what the issues are in your community. We can help you with strategic planning so that you can identify what those specific needs are, prioritize, think about what those next steps are. As I mentioned, we have a range of technical experts on our team and in our network that can help with specific topics or just navigating systems like grants.gov, sam.gov, other things that you're going to need to work through to apply for these funds. And then finally, a lot of opportunities out there for connecting with other organizations. If there are grants that you're exploring that do require a partner or a set of partners, we can help you with those connections. If you are just getting started in this world and want to find others who are working on similar initiatives that you can work together collaboratively on to put together a grant application, we're happy to help you with that as well. Next slide. So specific to GrantMaker, and again, we provide all those services regardless of the grant that you're pursuing, but we're adding a few specific services just to help folks with this unique opportunity. First of all, we've got a series of virtual meet and greets, and we've just scheduled the next few in the session or series, which will be in January and February, so we can get those dates posted here in a bit. We're also hosting office hours so that you can get your questions answered quickly. So if you just have a quick, 15-minute call with one of our staff to get you moving, you can quickly sign up for something like that. We also offer services through our partner network. And one of the big partners that we work with, as I mentioned before, was the Environmental Protection Network. They have office hours to help you through that SAM.gov process of getting your UEI. They also have some great how-to guides on their website, as well as an AI tool that will help you get started with writing. It won't write the grant for you, but it can help you get started with some of that language. I think sometimes just getting started writing is the biggest challenge, and so that tool can put together some language for you to get moving forward, and then you can pull from that and develop your grant application from some of that. And then the other thing that we'll be doing starting in February is a series of grant writing workshops. Those are not scheduled yet, but we'll have information in January about that. There'll be virtual and in-person options to really just provide some hands-on assistance with your application. The idea is really to build in that time and space for folks to work on their application while staff are available to provide some additional support. I'm going to walk through that application process with you. Next slide. Here's the best way to connect with us. There's a starting point, is always our website, heartlandej.org. There's a contact us button when you first open up the site, and that's where you can submit requests for support, provide a little bit about your organization, provide a little bit about the challenge that you're trying to address, and we'll get you connected with a staff member to make sure that they can provide the best possible help to get you going on this project or any other EJ initiative that you're working on. Also on our website, down at the bottom is a place to subscribe to our email list so you can get updated information on any additional sessions, workshops, as well as our quarterly newsletter that comes out. And as always, follow us on socials. We're on Facebook and LinkedIn primarily, so if you can stay up to date with the work that we're doing there. And that brings us back to Dulcie.
Yes. Thank you, Jeff. So what are some of the things that you can do now? So here's a checklist of things to think about what your project needs. What do you need to do to address the issue in your community? Again, the notice of funding opportunity is readily available on the website, and it is a guide that can answer, that you can use to start preparing for your application. Check that your organization has their UEI, brush up on the budgeting, ensure that you're receiving the email updates, and then share your questions and interests, including reviewing applications or serving on the advisory board. So I think if we go to the next slide. So here's how you can do it. This is an example from Region 4, but it looks exactly the same. So this is the Stay Connected section. It's at the bottom of the homepage, and you can put your information here. You can also text to see if you're interested in applying for a grant, or if you're interested in reviewing applications or serving on the community advisory board, or perhaps you just want to help support promotion and let others know about this. So you can check any of the boxes that apply and subscribe. And this is a great way, again, to receive ongoing emails if you haven't done so already, and updates. All right, so I think now we are ready to start answering some questions. So again, I'll try to do my best on some, and we have other members of our team that are here that may also be able to answer them. If we don't know the answer to the question, I will, off the top of our heads, then we will take those questions. We are documenting all the questions to make sure that we can respond if we are not able to respond today. So to moderate, we have Tatiana. So Tatiana, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for all your questions. We've been trying to answer them as much as possible, so please take a look at your peers' questions and the answers that we've been providing. There are a couple of questions that I'm just going to jump in to take related to the community advisory boards. So folks were asking if it was a paid role and what the structure is, what's the estimated time commitment. So I just want to emphasize that the community advisory boards for Region 7 are compensated, or being compensated for the expertise that they're bringing from the lived experiences that Dulcie was mentioning. It's something that we truly value, and they will be getting paid $200 for the board meetings, which includes reviewing the applications, making decisions on the funding awards. In terms of the time commitment, we would hope that the folks stay with us throughout the grant period of the 3-year cycle. Of course, there are some caveats to that, and we're very understanding of the situations that may occur with life and things like that, but we would hope that you would stay with us throughout for consistency of the review process. And the other thing I just wanted to emphasize that Region 7 will have 4 different community advisory boards who are representing the communities most directly impacted by environmental burdens, making sure that we have diverse characteristics with attention to geographic regions, backgrounds, and other experiences. So that's something that our application process will help with when we make our selection. And that'll be released shortly, and you can stay up to date with the form that Dulcie just walked us through on the website. So just want to make sure to mention that. So please let us know if you're interested. Some questions, Dulcie, that I'm going to punt to you is related to this question. So is it known how many awards or amount of funding will specifically be awarded to Region 7 grantees?
What I can do is answer how many will be awarded across the 3 regions, the National Central, Region 7, and Region 4. There's going to be around 500 awards is what we're anticipating for that. I don't know, Tony, if you have anything else you want to add with regard to that.
Sure, Dilsey, thanks so much. So thank you for that question. We do expect to be able to provide more information as we are currently working with EPA around funding breakouts and our estimates around how many grants will be awarded by region. So yes, what Dilsey outlined is correct. What we do know at this point is our website will consistently update on how many funds are remaining. So if you're asking this question along the lines of knowing, well, should I submit my application because have all the funds been exhausted? Our goal is to not have any potential applicant in that situation because our websites and communication channels will constantly update on the amount of funds remaining. But we do expect to share more details around the breakout of funds for each program to come.
Thank you. Thank you both. All right, so these next set of questions are about eligibility of the program. So I'll ask one, but they're kind of connected. So the first one is, does the organization's nonprofit status have to be a 501c3 or can it be a 456?
The organization does not have to be a 501c3. They just have to be registered in their state as a nonprofit organization.
Okay. All right, and then the next one is related. So again, eligibility. Are public state universities eligible for this program?
Yes, the institutes of higher education are eligible, but they have to be partnered with a community-based organization, a grassroots organization, or another organization as a statutory partner, which means that organization will also be receiving funding, and that it's not going just to the university.
I think this next question is for Tony. So folks are asking about specific project examples of foundational support projects or their non-competitive grant types of projects. Do you have to have a specific project in mind to apply for non-competitive? So what are some examples?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that. So we do provide some additional details around the non-competitive application process in the NOFO. So just wanted to call that out so that you can also reference that with what I'm about to share. But the foundational support grants will go through a more streamlined application process than the Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 competitive grants. An example of what you could expect there would be to outline the need for your organization around building capacity, whether it be additional training, additional staff, facilities, things along those lines. And then there is an ask or a requirement for information around your organization and to outline your planned budget. So for those capacity building grants, there is an expectation that there is a project in mind, and then expectation that your organization would also have a sense of what tier that project would best align with. And then as you are applying, putting together your application for the foundational support grant, you would then outline your needs, milestones, and budget around those milestones to build capacity to apply for the tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 grant. So a number of things could fall in there, like I outlined. That list that I just gave is not exhaustive, but again, it's about using the funds to be in a better position to successfully apply for one of the competitive grants. And those milestones are going to be unique based on what resource constraints may exist for your organization.
Thanks, Tony.
Sure.
This next question is going to be for Jeff. So our nonprofit applied for the most recent EPA community change funding for track 2. No decision has been made, and we aren't hopeful that it will be funded. As part of the TA services, would Heartland review the proposal we submitted and help us determine how to recycle it for the new Grantmaker program?
Absolutely, yes. We're already contacting folks that we know that we've worked with to submit those applications that weren't selected in this most recent announcement. And so I'm happy to work with folks. It's a great place to start because you've already got more than enough written in that proposal, and we can help you identify those key pieces to put into this application, and it should be able to pretty quickly get your application in. Definitely would recommend it if you weren't selected to go ahead and get started on that.
Yeah. All right, Dilsey, I'll have this one for you. So is it known how many awards or amount, or sorry, excuse me, wrong one. I've seen the answers that you can submit tier 1, 2, or 3 simultaneously if you can prove capacity, but can you also submit multiple applications within each tier simultaneously?
The answer is yes, but again, it goes back to, but they have to be different projects. They cannot submit in the same thing in the same tier for a project that is for the same project. Again, it will go back to capacity, and you may be asked to rank the most important projects first, or which ones that you feel are most important. That might be something that the CAB may ask you to do. But the easy answer is yes, you can. But there may be questions coming back to you. So thanks.
Yeah. There are questions about maximum amount, so I'll go ahead and ask that one. And I think this was more Tony. So is there a maximum amount that can be spent on a project? If I need 350,000 for asbestos removal and 300,000 for demolition, can I submit 2 separate grant requests even though it is the same project area?
Sorry. Go ahead, Dilsey.
No, I was just going to say no because it is the same project, right? So, right. Did you?
Right.
Mhm.
Yes. And so that is a great question. So I think what we will do is take that back and follow up. And Dilsey is correct. Our general leaning is one project, one application. But we also are aware that projects could be funded for different phases. And the reason I'm hesitating a little bit, just in full transparency, is because, as Dilsey mentioned earlier, given the extent and the timeline around the EJ TCGM program, we just don't see the feasibility in organizations having capacity to move through the grant cycle with multiple projects in different phases in a way that's going to be successfully demonstrated to a CAB for funding. But we recognize while it's not probable, it could be possible. So again, the answer is the thinking around the program design is no, one project, one application within that tier is our expectation. But again, let us take that back and we can provide some additional follow-up and clarity in our written FAQs. So thank you for that, pointing out that scenario.
Thank you both. So there's another question about the community advisory boards that I'll take on. So the question is, can applicants also serve as CAB members? So if your organization applies for the funding opportunity, you can still serve as a CAB member. It doesn't assure that, it doesn't put you in a position of benefit, because the application, we have 4 different boards and the application would be reviewed by a separate board. And so you wouldn't have any connection to your application review process, and we would be mitigating the conflicts of interest in that process as well. So we have infrastructure in place to mitigate that. So the answer is yes. That's a long-winded way to say yes. All right. Next question is related to eligibility again. There's a lot of questions. So would local health departments need to partner with a nonprofit in order to apply? Dilsey or Tony?
No, so a local health department would fall under the local government category, which makes them eligible for applying without a partnership.
All right, thank you. So for projects that may include 1 to 4 family home improvements, would Davis-Bacon, BABA, SHPO procurement apply, or is there any waivers since 1 to 4 family homes or funds are BIL money? So I guess this is more about the funding. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Tatiana, for clarifying too. I'm trying to see the questions also. And Dilsey, my apologies if I've jumped ahead, so feel free to clean up anything that I say here. 2 things here. For questions with that level of specificity, it would likely be most helpful to join in on one of those upcoming info sessions with specific topics where we can work a little more closely with your organization on technical assistance. So that's one part. The second part of this, and this may answer some of a grouping of questions around eligibility, Tatiana. The second part is EJTCGM is largely designed with a focus on community involvement, community input, shaping the design and making the final decisions for the program. So much of what I shouldn't say much of what, some of what I'm hearing in the questions, we are designing the program so that ultimately the community advisory boards will be making those decisions based on their lived experiences, personal and professional background, and better understanding of the communities for which the projects are intended to serve. So again, when it comes to project applicability determinations and eligibility, that's going to rest with the CABs. Tatiana, could you read that question one more time? I'm not sure I'm catching, there were some acronyms in there that I
Let me look for it real quick. I'm
Okay.
sorry about that. Oh, for projects that may include 1 to 4 family home improvements, would Davis-Bacon, BABA, I'm not familiar with these acronyms either, I apologize, SHPO procurement, so it's procurement mechanisms apply, or are there any waivers since the funds for 1 to family homes are BIL money?
Right. So BABA, all of the executive orders and statutory requirements for federal funding are going to, I shouldn't say all, I should not speak exhaustively, but our expectation is those requirements still apply to the EJTCGM program because it is an IRA funded program through bill. And so there are BABA implications for EJTCGM. What we have done with the program, though, is streamline it in a way that RTI has taken on much of that burden so that applicants do not have to dig through those requirements and regulations. So again, we will take that one back, also provide written follow-up in the Q&A. I would also suggest that you send that question to the TCGM inbox, and we can work a little more closely with you on that question in your specific project.
Good,
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
there are a couple of other questions that are similar. So again, it's something that we can take back, the other questions as well, to respond back to that question.
I'm going to ask 2 more questions since we have time. So is it possible to include multiple activities under a housing-focused project? So for example, could a project include not only energy efficiency, but other EJ concerns like water pollution?
I'm surprised Dilsey and I both didn't scream yes at the same time. Our goal with EJTCGM funds is to mitigate those disproportionate impacts and environmental harm in communities that have historically experienced those environmental injustices. So to the extent that your organization has the resources to build out a project that is going to work across multiple media and address multiple forms of pollution for communities that would, so we have the list of, and some examples in the NOFO of different projects. And if your project touches multiple aspects of those examples, then of course it would still be up to the CABs to evaluate your submission, but we'd be really excited to see a project be implemented that could handle multiple issues and pollution.
Thank you. I'll ask one more question, and then I just want to mention that you should be seeing a survey pop up before the end of this session. So it's just to get your feedback on today, if you are willing to provide that feedback. So what is the reimbursement schedule for competitive grants? How long would an org or community have to wait to get reimbursed for eligible costs?
I'll take that one to Dilsey. That's a great question. Another question that we're going to dig a little bit deeper in with the budgeting info session, but we expect to turn payment around pretty quickly. So I can say confidently less than 30 days. But my understanding is that it will, the turnaround will be even faster than that. So for today's call, let's say no more than 30 days. And in those topic specific webinars, particularly, I believe it's webinar 4 around budget, we'll be able to provide additional details there.
Great. So thank you, Tony. Thank you, Tatiana. You all may see this, the poll that Tatiana just mentioned. So we do ask you to fill it out. We always want to make sure that we're continuing to improve our information sessions and also that we can answer the questions. I know we didn't have an opportunity to get to everyone's questions, but we are making sure to document all of these questions. And we will have, Tony mentioned this, we will be developing an FAQ document that has questions and the responses, and that will be available on the website coming up soon. So you can also, let's go to the next slide, please. So if you want, again, to get in touch, here's the website, region7.thrivingenvironments.org. We also have social media. And in addition, you can, that you see down here at the bottom. And then also, again, if you would like to receive ongoing information, please go to the website and then move down to stay connected if you haven't already done so, so that you can be sure to receive any notices that go out, any information that's coming up. And if you're interested in a CAT being on the Community Advisory Board or a reviewer, please be sure to check those as well. And as we gather more information, we'll be putting out more details around those. So thank you again, and we have a few minutes. So if you would please, again, fill out the poll. And there's just 3 questions. Right. We thank you so much for joining us today. Again, if you have any questions, Yewande put the info, the email in order to ask any specific questions. You'll see that. And Yewande, if you can put it in one more time, that would be great. Specifically, if you have particular questions, that's info@thrivingenvironments.org.